Great. Thank you, Jonathan. Good to be with you all again. See some familiar faces. Like Jonathan said, my name's Vangie. I call the Pacific Northwest home, so Camas, Washington, just north of Portland, Oregon. And I work for the Focus Group. We are a major donor fundraising consulting firm. So we walk alongside nonprofits through their work, mainly with strategic planning, new development staff training, and then feasibility studies and capital campaigns. So our days are full of kingdom building work, which is amazing to be on this side of that and get to see all of the work that organizations like you all are doing. And we serve about, I think we're probably close to 150 clients now. About 40 of those are in capital campaigns. And so it's an incredible time and season in just the world of philanthropy. But I also know it's one that can take its toll. And so today I'd love to just talk through about boards and how you can engage your boards in meaningful ways. But also, what does that relationship look like for you and for your development team as well? I actually probably should call Bob because I last week was in the middle of some bylaw modifications for a local library foundation that I run. And I was like, ooh, this is territory that I need some legal expertise on. So I encourage you to just be thinking about that too as you're leaning into that, making sure your bylaws are up to date and current with your current practices, because they're super helpful when you need to reference them, not great when they're out of date and you need to reference them. So, but I would love for today to be a conversation. So please, at any point, throw comments, questions in the chat. And we can certainly pause and cover those, or if I know it's coming a little bit later, we'll hold off, but we will have some question and answer time at the end as well. So I would love to just start kind of leaning into the different relationships that we have when we're engaging with our boards, chair people, but also board members. How do they interact with executive directors, CEOs, heads of schools, and then the development team as well. So this image might ring true for some of you as you're leaning into this, or some of the feelings that you've had around board members saying, grow the organization, grow, grow, grow. Or in some cases, it's the other side of whoa, slow down. If you have people who are maybe more on the accounting side or more risk adverse, you might feel like you want to go faster as an executive director and your board is kind of pulling you back a little bit. But sometimes we have EDs that have the vision and you're trying to capture and get everyone on board as well. And then the development team, maybe you all can feel this, but we're not an ATM. We're not out like just raising so much money that we can fund all of the things that need to happen. And so in this kind of look at this relationship, we've got a lot of interactions that are happening back and forth. And that is really good. It's good to ensure that your board is active and that you are participating alongside with them, but they know firsthand what is happening in your ministry work. One of the questions we ask major donors in feasibility studies is, tell us about the board. Tell us about board members. What have been your interaction? And a lot of times they're like, I mean, I could tell you maybe some people who are on the board, but I don't know what the board does, or I don't have a personal connection or relationship with board members. And that's something that coming out of feasibility studies, we're always kind of recommending, how can we engage the board in fundraising activities more, but also just in communication with donors in various ways. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more today to talk through some really practical ways that board members can engage. But as we think about it, we have a lot of kind of common failures of this relationship model that we see. There's unclear expectations on everyone's part. As a board member, I get asked to serve on boards a lot, and I'm like, okay, am I serving because of my fundraising experience, or are you looking for other other gaps that you have that are being filled. So what is the expectation of them? Lack of accountability on both sides. How is that communication happening to make sure that we are achieving our strategic plan goals for the year, that whoever is responsible for those has the accountability, but also a place to share their updates and their progress and get advice and wisdom when they need it. Mixing of roles and blurring of lines. This happens a lot with board members and the executive director leadership. Whose vision are we following? And I can't speak more, strategic plans really help to clear up a lot of this as far as mixing the roles and blurring the lines. What is kind of that missional goals that we're all charging ahead together? Poor communication. This is what happened in my board last week. I will be honest, there are a lot of volunteers that were kind of floating around, and I was like, whoa, what's happening here? And so we had to have a meeting where we brought everyone together to really identify what are those communication gaps that we have between the work that we're doing at the board level and then ultimately the volunteers who carry out the work. And then really a lack of agreement on how development should be carried out. That comment kind of about we're not an ATM, right? I know all of you would agree that fundraising is relational. It takes time. And sometimes we're not going to see a first gift or potentially. And can be that tension between transactions, events, kind of getting dollars in the door versus taking time to really build sustainable long-term partnerships with donors. And so if we've got that push and pull happening a little bit, that definitely can kind of lead to those unclear expectations and poor communication as well. So as we look at this, we want to make sure that the executive director is leading by example in giving a sacrificial gift. I think that's important, especially when executive directors are part of the asking process. If you yourself are not giving, it's hard to make an ask for somebody else to come alongside. Sacrificial is defined differently for everyone. That the executive director is creating a culture of fundraising. For some organizations, this could take 3 years to really kind of make a shift to relational fundraising from transaction and events. And so this is one that it's important that it's coming from the top down. Obviously, if you have a development team member and it's either a vice president or director of development, whatever that role might be, they're really working in tandem with the executive director. The executive director is involved in fundraising by working with those top donors, really leaning into those key relationships. And then they're really approving that development plan that is created by the development team. We could do a whole other conversation about your annual plan, which I'm sure Heather and Jonathan have taken you through, but the plan gives you the freedom to say no to things that are suggested that don't really value your time, and maybe you're going to put too much effort towards that. I always think about that with golf tournaments. Everyone is like, oh, you should do a golf tournament. Well, let's look at the cost of time that it takes. And I know you all are in Arizona, so that's a big thing, but I'm always questioning, like, what is the effort that we're putting into this golf tournament? What are we really reaping the benefits of? So making sure that we really want to make sure that you have a development plan that your executive director stands behind and is able to understand and help you implement. Again, the development team should be leading by example by giving a sacrificial gift as well. Being 100% supportive of the executive director's culture of fundraising. When there is misalignment, coming alongside and making sure we get back on that same page together. Responsible ultimately for creating that development plan. And thinking too, how do we leverage the board and our executive director as part of this plan? Where are the key moments in our care activities that we're doing with our donors, where we can pull them in, and where are the key moments in our cultivation activities, where we can pull them in as well, and having that clearly defined. I know Heather, I think, is going to do a recruiting and job description, kind of talking through that next. But this would be one of those things that if you have that clearly outlined in your annual plan, that just goes right into the job description for your board members. And again, it helps to set those expectations for everyone. Obviously, this development team is carrying out and supervising the plan, making sure they're implementing it, modifying it as they need to, creating your collateral and support materials, such as your case for support. You can jump back a couple webinars ago. We did a case for support, really deep dive into that, but it's keeping that up to date. That document is so crucial in how you can equip your executive director and board members to really tell the story of your work and cast vision for your work.
Hey, Vangie. Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit about when you're referencing a development team? Sure. Can you just talk a little bit about who that is, what that looks like, and again, understanding how they play a crucial role in fundraising?
Yeah, your development team, it's going to look different for everyone. So you might have one person who works alongside the executive director, and they're responsible for all development activities, execution, and implementation of that. You might be blessed and you've got multiple people on that team. Maybe you've got a coordinator or a data manager or someone who's processing gifts, in addition to gift officers who are serving in that role. Or you could be it as the executive director, and you're just you're the one who's out there making the plan, implementing the plan. In a lot of cases, if that's the case, I would recommend pulling in some key volunteers who can come alongside you and build a volunteer development team. Everyone has relationships, and so you're able to kind of give them the assignment of being advocates for your ministry. And in some cases, volunteers are more than willing to be askers as well. With some training, walking alongside you, they can really fulfill that role. So if you're brand new, or maybe your annual budget isn't to the point where you can justify this development role yet, I would kind of encourage you to look at, are there key volunteers that kind of keep raising their hand, looking for ownership opportunities, who are relational and can come alongside you in that role. I've seen organizations actually hire volunteers once they are able to fund a development role. So it is really something good to lean into. But your development team is anyone that's really focused on fundraising, saying thank you, or even some of your event staff, if you have donor-centric events that are happening.
Great. And then, Vangie, do you recommend having board representation on the development team, or does that just depend on the right fit and gifts and different things like that? Or what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think it depends on if you have a development committee of the board. If that's the case, that group kind of is the liaison to the development team and can serve in a lot of different capacities in that way. But if you're looking at a volunteer team, pulling in some board members is great. Obviously, they're board members for a reason. They have said yes, they trust and believe in the ministry and the work that you're doing. And so their story is a great one to tell. Board members also are typically well networked. And so they've got a network of people that they might be willing to introduce to the ministry in that way. I think it's the expectation piece is really important, though, of what are we asking them to do and what are they comfortable doing. I have a lot of board members that I work with that are more than happy to open their networks, have a conversation, but when it comes time for the ask, they kind of step back and say, hey, I'm going to leave this to the staff to do. So it's really just making sure you're clear on that. Yeah. Good. Okay. So board of directors should be giving a sacrificial gift. Some organizations actually put a dollar amount to this. I don't love that. That feels very transactional. So the language again of the sacrificial giving, I think, is really important. But you need to honor your board members by taking them through the same process that you would take donors through. So if you have an asking process or the cultivation process, we want to walk them through that. We want to make sure they know when we're going to make an ask and that we've asked permission to do so. And then we want to follow up and steward that gift well. We don't want to take this group for granted in that way. But the other thing is, as long as we are walking them through that asking process and we're stewarding their gift well, they're more inclined to open up their networks because they've seen the process. They've experienced it firsthand. So this is one that your board chair can be a very active member in this process of kind of owning the board of directors giving. And if they're comfortable with making asks, they can kind of own this group, or they can come alongside the executive director of the development team in that way. Okay, sorry, I have a screen issue here. There we go. Okay. So our next thing is we want to make sure that the board is supporting the culture of fundraising and the development plan. So as you're thinking about bringing new board members on, it's sitting down and it's having an onboarding process for them, making sure they see the development plan, they understand what are the core values that are driving this ministry and our work on the development team, and how do we kind of lean into that. I've done book. I've done that with boards to make sure we're all on the same page about how we're talking about biblical stewardship of gifts.
Hey, Vangie, Vangie, you just broke up on us a little bit there. What's the title of that book?
Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry Nouwen. Yeah. So there is it's a great resource. It's short, but there's also a lot of collateral online that you can take your board through and just make sure you're all on the same page when it comes to that biblical stewardship. But we want to make sure that everyone knows, we're leaning into relational fundraising, not transactional in that way. We want board members to be advocates with their peers and available to give testimonies to others about the effectiveness of the work. It's really fun as an executive director or development team member to bring a board member along with you when you're presenting the case or making the ask. It's just another voice in the conversation, but they obviously have their own story as to why they support your organization. So it's a really great opportunity to include them in that. And yeah, everyone's talking about spirituality of fundraising. It's great. There's a workbook, totally a good resource for that as well. And there's a whole section on prayer, which I think is really vital that we sometimes miss when we're working with boards and with fundraising. So definitely encourage you to hit that up. Our team is actually reading through all of Henry Nouwen's books. There's like 85 of them or something. And so that has been a really, if you hear it, spirituality of fundraising is kind of the condensed version of everything, but he's got some great work out there. And then also we want board members to serve as advocates or askers with respect to fundraising in that way. So primary callers, when I use the language primary callers, that is who owns the relationship. We want to make sure that whoever is connected to the donor is the closest person in that relationship. They're obviously going to get that donor to answer phone calls, say yes to attending events, those kinds of things. And in some way, your board members are going to be the ones that have that closest relationship. They may not be making the ask, that's okay, but they're at least stewarding that individual through the cultivation process and then saying thank you appropriately. So there's a lot of ways that you can pull them into that. So let's jump into 5 keys to kind of increasing board engagement in fundraising. The first one, we've talked about this, but we want to set expectations from the start. When I get asked to join a board, I'm probably that person that grills and asks all of the questions on the front end. A lot of board members don't do that. I encourage board members to do it, But these are all of the things that we want our board members to really understand. What does the board position description look like? If you don't have a job description for your board members, this would be something to lean into. What are the expectations in the board policy manual, if you have one, that you can really lean into? There's always kind of that, do I have to give a certain amount? That seems to be a very common question. And so those expectations, but also how many hours a month are we looking at? Are we a board that meets every month? Do we meet quarterly? Are there ad hoc board meetings, or are there committees that your board members need to serve on outside of that? And then the hope would be that eventually, these board members would be willing to step up into executive board roles, serving as your chairperson or your vice president or your treasurer, other roles in that way. And so really setting those expectations early helps to build that ownership process. Accountability from the board chair. This really leans back to the strategic plan or your goals that you have, but in close contact to make sure that they're holding you accountable, and then you are holding them accountable to these expectations that have been laid out. What does the reporting look like in board meetings? What questions do board members have about the development process? What do they want to know? A lot of boards will sometimes have people, CPAs or others, who have kind of that numbers, metrics. What are the helpful reports? And I think this is one that is constantly changing, especially as you have new board members come on to the team. They might want to see different graphs or charts or be looking at different information there, but we want to make sure that we're really clear that we will report and that we want them to tell us how they want us to report. And then we don't do this enough in the fundraising world. We need to celebrate. We need to have praise reports. We need to have those moments where we are just honoring the work that has happened, but then also celebrating what now gets to happen through the impact that you're having. So I think building that into your board culture is really good. We're not just a Zoom board meeting, right? We're not just once a quarter. Like, is there ways that you can integrate in some celebration as well?
Yeah, I would, just to reiterate back on that piece there, this is a big Vangie sort of soapbox issue for me. I just feel like we have to be clear on expectations, and if people are going to be successful, they need to understand what those are. And Vangie, I've even gone so far as to say, before we put somebody on the board, right? They need to understand what the expectations are and what those deliverables are going to be, so that they can consider if this is the right leadership spot for them in this season. And I think too often we're just quickly forming boards with closer relationships, and a lot of people leave maybe that first board meeting and maybe they don't say it out loud, but they're thinking, oh, I didn't know this was going to be that. I didn't know this was going to be expected of me, especially from a fundraising standpoint. So I just think, right, none of us would ever take a job without understanding, right, the roles and responsibilities and the expectations of that job. And so I think we really owe that to board members and potential board members. And that's going to help us form the right team and the right board.
Totally. And I would just say, like, I'll pull in a fundraising principle of ours, like, a no is never forever. We say that about giving, but we also say that about board participation. So even in this season of life, it might not be right for that individual, but that doesn't mean that, 2 years from now, or when their kids graduate from high school, they might have more capacity and they might have more time, or they might even say, you know what, we're really focusing in on a few nonprofits that we want to lean into a little bit deeper. So if you get a no, as you're kind of leaning into the recruiting process, I encourage you to keep that person on your radar, though, because it might be that circumstances change and they want to engage in more ways.
Well, and let me just say too, right? We just have to trust God in that process. If we're getting a no from somebody, right, then that means it's not the right time, not the right season for them. And so it wouldn't probably be the right leadership opportunity at that time. So look at that as sort of helping you figure out, right, who to approach next, and just believing and trusting that that God's going to put that right team together.
Right, right. I think we want to make sure that we're really establishing kind of our work as ministry. And that's, Henry Nouwen comes in there too, but we believe that all of our supporters are on a journey to become more faithful stewards. A tagline that you can say is that, it's not what we want from them, it's what we want for them. And so how are we really leaning in that this is a blessing in their lives? We believe that our work in development is an opportunity to walk with donors on that journey. If you have been privileged to see somebody's heart of generosity come to being, it is incredible to really just lean in and see more generosity come out and then really find kind of their own biblical stewardship motto. Our prayer is that God would use us to help our supporters become more faithful and joyful stewards of the resources that they have. Our goal is to help our supporters develop hearts that are rich towards God and his work. And then our work is ministry, and we're used by God to bring that blessing into lives and resources to our organization. So I would lean into this a little bit. This will be a slide, obviously, that you all will have access, but if you want to do some work with your board to really just say, what is our theology of giving, what we have for views around this, that is a really rich and meaningful time to do that. But I think this is a key step in your process as you're leaning in. Just kind of.
Hey, Vangie, I think you hit mute. There you go.
My gosh, sorry guys.
Now we've got you back.
The millennial is struggling with tech today. Sorry about that. Oh my goodness.
Vangie, can I just make one promo for you in the focus group, because what you just started to say about creating a theology of that, I want everyone to know you can go on to the focus group and look at their resources section, and they have some of the best material out there on creating a theology of fundraising. And I think this is critical for many boards to really think through, what is our attitude toward fundraising, and what is the ways that we will interact with our donors? What ways will we honor their giving? What ways, what kind of donations do we take? And when do we actually say no? Some of those are the hardest questions. And I think focus group has developed some of the best materials out there. So if you haven't ever thought about a theology of fundraising, go watch one of the videos or look at their materials. It is well worth the time. So I just wanted to promo that for you. And it was my bad. I tried to unmute myself and I muted you. So I take full responsibility. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thanks, Heather. I just did this with a board and a development team together. And so I think there's a lot of synergy of doing that. But yes, a theology of fundraising or development, really looking at what scripture jumps out to you. But kind of as we look at this, our task is to invite people who believe in our mission and care about our future to participate with joy and enthusiasm in a significant moment in our history by giving the gift they would most like to give and which could bring them the greatest level of satisfaction as a steward of God's resources. I think when you kind of like stop and think about it in that way, like one of my things is if fundraising ever starts to feel icky, don't do it. Because it is icky and you're probably not the only one feeling that. But if we keep coming back to the root reason of why we're called to kind of in this work that we do in the development world, it's just really great to see what the Lord can do with people and their generous giving around that. One size does not fit all. Definitely every organization is going to look a little bit different as you build out your board and as you think about your board's engagement. But we want to make sure that as we think about this, what are kind of the biggest mistakes in development when we ask people in the board to really support fundraising is we don't give them context for it and we don't fit our own context. And so we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, has that understanding of our fundraising efforts. And we're going to do a 6 moments in time kind of little teaser, but it's really good to help tailor a plan for each board member too. That's something the board chair can sit down and do with each member, or a development team member can sit down, but it's really thinking through how does this board member really engage and making sure that it's meaningful work for them. We want to resource each board member for success, and that looks different for everyone. Somebody might say, I need more materials, or I need one-pagers, I need content. Somebody might say, I want to go alongside you to see and experience development firsthand because it's new to me and I've never actually been a part of that process. We want to make sure that we're communicating the plan so that there's not a sense of misrepresentation in the room, or expectations are being put on people that maybe aren't comfortable with making an ask, or they're not comfortable with filling a table for a banquet, whatever it might be. We want to make sure that the board really does have an understanding of how everyone's a puzzle piece kind of fitting into the broader picture. And then again, we really want to make sure we're celebrating their successes and wins. So building in opportunities and board meetings for them to share, for them to tell their own stories of how they've brought people along, or maybe they went along on a case statement or a tour opportunity. What does that look like for them, and how has that shifted their perspective too?
This is another really significant point. I think it's just right. Too often we just stay very general, right? And we treat all board members as if they have the same types of networks, right? The same gifts, right? The same skills and abilities. And we've got to take time to understand what different board members bring to the table and how God wants to use them in the role of fundraising. So yeah, again, a big mistake I see out there is just staying too general, and of course, just treating everybody in the same way, or looking at everybody with the same lens.
Right. So these are just, some kind of questions that you can mull on, but what are 6 things, if you're a board member, what are 6 things that you can do to commit to in the next 12 months to kind of help implement the development team's fundraising plan? And we'll talk through some practical application of that. And then for ministry staff, what are 6 things that you can do in the next 12 months to help empower board members to come alongside the development plan? We talked about that resourcing and equipping. That could be materials, or it could be just relational, more engagement, helping them feel more comfortable in their role. So this is a good exercise to do, just to think through that. But here's a couple examples. So if I was a board member and I kind of did my 6 here, work with the development team to create a contact list. I have people in my network. If I'm really passionate about an organization, my friends have heard about it. They know the clients that I currently am loving working with and their ministry that they have. And so it's not going to come by any surprise to anyone as you start to talk through your friend list. But what is that contact list? Or even, did somebody maybe give a gift and you can look at the list to see if you have a personal connection with any new givers? Maybe as a board member, I'm willing to open the doors for the executive director to meet with 2 to 3 prospects in this year and really think through how can I come alongside and help to steward those relationships. Obviously, attending key fundraising events is always good. We talked about that, but we really want to make sure that we're seeing the board member active and present, so that donors know who's behind this organization, who is backing this, and who is supporting this. Going on 1 to 2 visits, interacting, whether it's maybe a tour on your property, if you have a site location that you can walk alongside and be a voice around that. I did we built a tour at an equine therapy organization on their barn, like their property. We actually walked through with the board and built out a tour. And so board members then knew that they were equipped to bring people to the property and do a tour. It's low pressure. You took money off the table. There's no conversation about money. It is purely come and see and learn more. Hosting a table at your annual banquet or your gala, or sponsoring a team, whatever it might be, and really being intentional to bring new people in, not just your same group that you're inviting every year, but intentional about doing that. And then really, thinking through, are there groups or networks that you as a board member are connected with that you can introduce? Rotary, the pastors group, your small group, different networks that you might have that you'd be willing to share a little bit more about the ministry and the work that is happening. So this is just an example, but it's a fun exercise to kind of walk through those 6 moments in time of what can board members do. But again, it's customized, right? It's customized for me, or it's customized for the board member to really lean into and own. Okay, so as we really think through this, these are just, I threw some charts in here that I think help get us a little bit more understanding of, if we're talking about that 6 moments in time and I'm willing to introduce people into my network, what does it look like as far as their capacity to give and their commitment to the work? So really thinking through, if I am somebody and I have a heart for evangelism, I served as a missionary overseas for many years, but I am also not the person that's going to stand on the street corner. How can I then find a ministry that aligns with mission? Really that commitment to your work that you're specifically doing. And this is a good tool to use with board members as they look through that. This one is also helpful just as you're looking at how do you kind of move people through that relationship within the organization. They have knowledge and experience of what you do, but maybe they don't have any involvement yet. And so we want to make sure that we're bringing them in and we're sharing the mission and vision with them. And then maybe they've indicated some interest and involvement in different ways. And then ultimately that leads to a financial gift. This is the same for board members. As you're looking at pursuing new board members too, it might take time and energy to lean into this, but we really look at that cultivation piece and then kind of leaning into an invitation that is ultimately made. This one is kind of interesting as you think about just the different ways that you can engage people. What does that look like? What's financial? What is participatory? So as you're thinking through those 6 moments in time with your board members, like all of these apply to that active effort that they have. But this is also really good for setting expectations too for people. If you're, is a sponsorship an opportunity and one way that you can empower board members to come alongside? So there's definitely this good kind of list here that you can lean into, and board members can help them see themselves here. But all of these things would ultimately lead to that supporting of that development plan effort. We want to make sure that they really understand your strategy and how they fit. So creating simple and clear documents that outline your annual development plan. I have one organization that has, like, when they print their development plan, it's just this massive document, and it's pretty overwhelming for me. But if they were to say, here are the care activities, the cultivation activities, and like our events that we have in a year, just in a really clear, simple document, as a board member, that makes it really clear as to, 1, how can I participate? But 2, what types of activities do we do? And then you're less likely to get, the bake sale strategy suggested or other things. So it's good to have clear documents that outline that. I think we missed the mark with metrics and dashboards that we use to track success with boards. So if we really want to see ownership in the process, we want to make sure that we're addressing that, we're providing them with information. So if you have a way, with that pipeline that we talked about, if you've got a way where you can identify how many givers or prospects you have in each stage, that's a really fascinating metric for board members, especially if you are in a spot where you are looking to add to your development team or even hire your first development team member. We want to start early by showing some of those metrics and dashboards so that we can have the board have a clear understanding of why you're asking for that funding to come alongside and kind of beef up that role or the development team that you have. So really thinking through what are those metrics and dashboards that are easy for you to produce, but can be a regular rhythm that they start to see the growth patterns happening. Inviting input. It does not have to be in the board meeting context. I think it's great to take people out and have a meal with them and really lean into, hey, tell me a little bit more. What questions do you have about our development work? How can we respond? How can we answer those? And kind of diving into that one-on-one engagement if there may be someone who doesn't speak up in that board meeting environment. Everyone has input. Everyone has something that they want to share. And then I think a big one is asking for prayer. Really making sure that they know where are those key prayer points that you need throughout the year. But then obviously updating them with praise reports as well. We talked earlier, Jonathan asked about a development committee. So they can be incredible assets to your development program from your board standpoint. If you have a board that has different committees identified, this is a really great group that can dive a little bit deeper with you as development team and the executive director. So it can be a standing board committee, or you could build it as an advisory group that maybe you just bring together a couple times a year, or maybe they're really active around event season. If you've got a big gala or banquet, they're kind of your people that are going to help advise and craft that. You can lean outside of board members. This is a good opportunity if you've got somebody that's like, I can't commit to being a board member, but I do want to participate. And they are great relationally, and maybe they have a network. That would be a good opportunity to pull someone in and help them get a little taste of some ownership in your organization. They provide advice, extra hands, additional resources when you need to ramp up in those certain seasons of life. But we really want to make sure that we're not kind of taking fundraising off the plate of your entire board and just delegating to this committee. We still want fundraising to be an active conversation that is happening at the board level, not just with kind of these committee. We want it to be across the board. This is just maybe a group that can do a little bit more of a deep dive focus effort in that. So that would be the caution that we would have for you. Okay, I know that was a lot. So hopefully, I know Jonathan and Heather are available to deep dive and really through this month of kind of leaning into more board. We wanted to give you a lot to think about so you can kind of start to do some bite-sized chunk work. But I wanted to talk about this concept of setting up, showing up, and following up. I think that is really clear expectations for board members. Set up a meeting, set up an opportunity as a board member, show up, whether it's part of a tour, saying thank you, engaging in that, and then following up and making sure that that individual that the board member has invited into the process is really being taken care of and told thank you multiple times. So this setup, show up, follow up concept is helpful. So here are some just very practical ways that board members can set up, show up, and follow up. They can make a phone call. they can say thank you. It's really good to lean into using volunteers. One of the most meaningful thank yous I ever received was from a volunteer, not a staff member. She just called to say thank you for a recent gift I had made to an organization. We got to have a great conversation. And I know it brought her joy, but it really did bring me joy to hear from somebody who wanted to give of their time. So this could be a phone call to say thank you. This could be a phone call to invite someone to an event to come and see and learn more. And so this is just a great, easy first step. Maybe there's an opportunity for a board member to host an event or a small gathering at their house and share their story. And really pull in their people from their group or their network, or even maybe they say, I'm going to supply the home and the food, and we'd love for you to bring people into that environment. This is that small group strategy of a tour, a come and see and learn more. But people often who love to host, you probably know who those people are. This is a love language for them to be able to give of their space to do that.
And this is a good reminder too. We need to understand our board members' stories. and a lot of us don't know those, right? Why are they passionate about this work? There's a lot of work they could be involved in out there. Why did they choose this? Why is it meaningful for them? Why do they feel like God has led them right to this place, and even to the high level of board leadership connected with it? So some great stories out there that I think sometimes we overlook.
And I would encourage you, if you have a board member who's hosting a gathering, whether it be at their home or their business, include them in the program. Have them tell their story as well. That goes a long way, not only for them, but also for the attendees of the program. And they might, make themselves available to go with the executive director and the development team on a visit with a donor. We talked earlier about what's their comfort level. Obviously, we're not asking them to make the ask, but are they willing to along to or even be there for the ask? They're just, they don't need to make the ask. That takes the pressure off of them. But this is a great way for them to tell their story. But also for those donors who potentially, want to see sustainability, they want to see leaders behind the mission other than staff. This is a great way to put your best foot forward by featuring a board member who can tell the story and answer some questions in addition to staff members. We just talked about this one, but sharing your own story on why you're involved in the organization, that's a great thing for board members to do. I think it's always good to look at, can we highlight our board members in our newsletters? Can we highlight them in videos that we're doing on social media? Are there ways that we can start to make our board members more visible? Are they on the stage at our annual galas or our banquets? Are they kind of representing the ministry from that standpoint? In some cases, they are the best person to make the ask at a banquet event. It takes it off of the staff, but it puts it on a board member maybe making an ask if they're really charismatic from the stage. Show someone the case and ask them to join you in giving. This would obviously be if a board member is very comfortable with the asking process and they've kind of walked through what it looks like to make an ask. But this is one that as a board member, I have done. I have taken a case from an organization that I serve, and I've asked others to come alongside and join me in my giving of a sacrificial gift to come alongside. So that is a meaningful way that people can really lean into.
Vangie, just for those that don't know what a case statement is, can you just give us 30 seconds on that?
Yeah, so a case statement is really a presentation tool that you use in major donor asks, and everyone defines their major donors differently. I was on a call this morning with an organization. A major donor is anyone who gives $1,000 or more. But it's really somebody that has that relationship, and you walk them through your mission, your need. What is the need that you're addressing? You tell some stories of lifetime impact or transformation. You outline the program that you have, and then you talk about your vision for the future. What is the budget that's required? How do you get there? What's that kind of gift plan invitation look like? And then ultimately, the board members are actually listed in the case as kind of the leadership team that is coming alongside the staff. So it is a presentation tool, but it really does give this comprehensive look at your ministry. And then it is a great tool that helps you make an ask, because people are able to see themselves on a gift plan, and you're able to circle and say, would you consider giving in this tier of giving, based on what you believe they can give. So it's a freeing tool because it just helps you walk through the process. But in the use of it, we also really get to learn a lot about the donor, especially in the needs section. What statistics are striking them? Kind of where is their heart? Where does the passion lie? Is there a program that maybe they aren't as familiar with, that you get to do a little bit of a deeper dive so that you can show them more of the comprehensive work of your ministry? Great. We talked about this, but being involved in the thinking process. I have one organization that pulls their staff and board members in January, and they call everyone who gave in the previous year, even if they're just leaving a voicemail. And it is noisy and busy in this room, and it is super fun when you get a call and you can hear all of the conversations that are happening. So that's one way. Or, you know, I've been part of organizations where we have the, gifts coming in, and we send the list to a volunteer who loves to write thank you cards. And she just faithfully writes these thank you cards every week as gifts come in. So there's a lot of ways that you can think this through, but we really want to be intentional in saying thank you. There's the immediate receipt thank you, right, that you get if you give online or if you get in the mail. And then there's the follow-up thank you to tell me, like, how is my gift being used? What is the impact that gift is having? And we want to think about how can we thank 3 times throughout that course for that gift as well, especially before we make another ask. And everyone's love language when it comes to thanking is so different. So this is one. I am somebody that I want to hear stories of life transformed. I want to kind of lean into that. Some people might want to see metrics. That's just how they understand. Some people maybe want tangible items. I always think if you're going to do something that's not a consumable, like throw your logo on it, because then people get to tell about your ministry when people stop them and ask them. So really be thinking, how do we say thank you to donors in appropriate ways? Could be a text message, could be a video, an unedited, just quick iPhone video. Those go a long way with saying thank you. All right, then this is an important one for board members to really be thinking through making their own estate gift or encouraging others to do so. Planned and estate giving is one that I think organizations, we sometimes forget about this because it feels like it's daunting to get it set up. And then a legacy check might show up on your desk and you're like, oh, what do we do with this? But this is one that board members can really lead the charge in this effort. They obviously are on the front end of setting those policies of what types of gifts you're going to accept for estate giving. But this is an ask that goes hand in hand with a cash ask as well. Would you consider, or have you ever thought about including your ministry in your will or estate? And most people will say, I've not actually thought about it, but I would be interested in learning more. So this is a good one for board members to lead by example in. Serving on the development committee, if they really have a passion for leaning into fundraising and are willing to lean into advice and wisdom, this is a great one to do. So inviting them into that. Are they somebody who's an advisor and they want to be counseled? Or are they somebody who wants to really be active and doing and kind of serve in that role? So again, getting to know your board members helps you identify where they would fit. And then I think this is really important to be equipping our board members to pray for our team. That comes with relationship, right? We are in relational fundraising. How can we be relational with our board as well? Are we equipping them with prayer requests? Are we sharing praise reports back out with them? The minute you're going into a large donor meeting and you're making an ask, is there a board member that you can call who can pause and pray with you as you walk into that meeting? Those are really great key roles for board members to come alongside you in. There we have it. So I know we've got some time for some Q&A, of course, and you've got a full slate of board activities this quarter, which just looking at the website, there's a lot that you can dive into here, but would love to just open up the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vangie. Such practical stuff in here. I love all that. So yeah, please fire away on some questions. Maybe Vangie brought up something that you'd like to learn a little bit more about. Or also, is there something that just stood out to you that you might want to share, that you just feel like God is saying you need to give some attention to this? Maybe we can all learn from that as well. So yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and fire away.
Thank you for allowing me to unmute myself, because what I was going to say take too long to type. So I want to get some feedback. Oh, by the way, this is Eloise. I wanted to get some feedback on the best approach to get every board member committed to become donors.
Yeah. First of all, I think it needs to be an expectation. If you're kind of transitioning into that, I think the job description needs to be collectively agreed upon by your current board. So
it is.
Yep. Okay. So it's an expectation. So
from the beginning.
Okay. Is it listed as a sacrificial gift, or is there an dollar?
You broke up. Can you say that again? Is it listed as, I heard sacrificial, and then I didn't hear anything else?
Or is there a specific dollar amount listed?
Oh, no, not a dollar amount. It's the expectation in the job description is just, it doesn't even say donor. It's to financially support.
Okay. So this is one where I would pull in your board chair to really engage with you on the strategies around how to do this. But if you've got, a point where you're at a certain level of giving and you're pushing to 100%, that can be coming from the board chair to encourage others to participate in that way. A good kind of push too is, especially if you're applying for any sort of foundation grants, if you can show that you have 100% board giving, your application goes further because they see that you have all kind of board members are on target with that, are supporting the ministry going forward. But it's really going to be a relational ask. I wouldn't, you could bring that up in a board meeting and say, we're really aiming to have 100% board participation. The board chair could say, I look forward to reaching out to each one of you to have a conversation about your giving, but you want to make sure you're taking them through the proper process to make sure they're ready to give, and that you're making an ask and it's not just an assumed ask because it's part of the job description. I think
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that the role of the chair or of the ED?
I think it's in partnership. I really do. I think it's really good to have the board chair own that, but they might say, wow, you're much closer to this person in relationship. And in that case, then it should fall to the ED, but it needs to come from the leadership of the board down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Vangie, you touched on a couple things that I was going to add as well. I think you've got to let board members know why it's important, right, that they give. So Vangie, you brought up foundation grants. right? A question on a lot of grant applications is what percentage of your board is financially supporting your organization? And if that number is less than 100, that can stall a lot of grant requests. I think that your board members are going to be in conversation with people, bringing other people to the table. So it's certainly important that they are givers themselves as they're asking other people to step up and support the vision and mission. And the other thing I would say, Eloise, is you're sitting around a table with your board, and that's a group of people that are making decisions that are going to impact hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, on how money is spent and what it's going to be used for. And if that group is not committed to giving themselves, I think it's tough to have them speak into decisions like that. I think they need to be personally invested. So I think that you can talk about the why as well, and even some, some of these specific examples, because I think it really sets the context and paints an even bigger picture.
Right, right. Some organizations will say, we want this to be the top 3 or one of the top 3 ministries you support. So, there's different ways as you craft it, but again, I think it needs to be, if that was an expectation that was laid out, then it really falls to the board chair to come alongside.
And just one thing I just recently experienced was with one of the boards, the individuals, though they knew it up front, they forgot, and they often didn't know where to give or how to give. And so, what you said of setting expectations, I love also including this as part of the orientation, which helps people walk through a statement for a case statement, or to talk about some of the funding that we're currently doing, some of the needs we currently have, and to create that conversation of what are you passionate about? And then when you connect to what a board member is really passionate about, it helps, like you said, that relational side. And so once this one board was doing this, they realized, wow, they had less than half their individuals giving. They focused on it from what's our areas of passion? What are our biggest concerns? Where are our biggest gaps? And as they did that, board members just started jumping on, and they said, we're not asking for $500. We're asking you to contribute. And they even went one step further, and they said, we really love to have you contribute in the first quarter to set a precedent. So they didn't do a dollar amount, but they said that helps us, number one, in grant writing. Number two, it helps us in getting income in the beginning of the year when everyone's given at the end of the year. So it just sets a lot of precedents. And I thought they had a really remarkable response to that, where they went from 50% to 100%. And it was very relational. I thought that your point with that is good.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Good.
Yeah, what else? Fire away. Question or something else that stood out for you?
Always great to hear the great takeaways that you have, what you're thinking about kind of leaving, because that helps Vangie, helps us know how to just support you and encourage you. So if you want to type those into the chat box, if you're shy and don't want to speak up, but we would love to hear what your takeaways are, what you're thinking about, what seems to be important.
Hey,
oh, sorry. Go for it.
Yeah, this is Rob Bearden, Arctic Barnabas Ministries, new to you guys, first time being in on an event. And what really stood out to me was the encouragement for the director to lead in sacrificial giving. Honestly, not something that I had thought about before. New to full-time ministry, new to this role, and support raising individually and as an organization, and just hadn't even thought about that. So you've got my wheels turning, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
There's something about saying, will you join me in giving? Right?
That's right. Christy, I think you had wondered earlier, if I remember the chat there, you were asking if people still appreciate random phone calls these days. Like I said in the chat, you'll probably have to leave a number of messages, but that's okay. You're getting the message across. And one thing I added in the chat, Vangie, was I do a lot of quicker text messaging to
Yeah.
people when we receive gifts. That's not, of course, the only thank you and acknowledgement, but I'll do something just quick because I'm grateful for the gift and I want to make sure that they know that we received it. And then I'll follow that up with a couple other ways to say thank you. Chrissy, I guess one caveat is if your board members and staff are all 20-year-olds, they don't know how to make a phone call anyway. So you probably have to work around that and figure it out. So, but just have to find out what works for you.
I had an organization during COVID. It was a camp, so they had to completely shut down, right, in California. And they did some building projects during that season. And the first night back of camp, which to them, it was one of those things where camp was so vital after COVID, right? We needed to get our kiddos back engaged with one another. They did just a really quick, unedited iPhone video of the kids in the amphitheater that had been built during COVID, worshiping the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
No text, no context, just here's a video. Thank you for what you did. That, however, was a full year after most people had given their gift. So I think it's important to be thinking, like, what are they passionate about that even though I said thank you early on, how can I show the impact of that gift a year from now or 6 months from now that kind of pulls them back into the ministry and shows them, and you're just able to say thank you. So encourage you to be thinking a little bit outside of the box when you are saying thank you.
Yeah, and of course, videos like that they've just never been easier to shoot, right? We're all holding, cameras in our hand 24/7. Bridget said voice memos are the best. So Bridget is a voice memoer and she's great at it. So she'll voice memo me, and it's just a quicker way. Instead of typing out, a 3 or 4 minute, text message, Bridget will just hit record, and I love seeing her voice memos come through. They are always personal and sharing something positive and encouraging to me, and you can do that pretty easily. So Bridget mentions that she does that. So if you've never done that, you might want to try that out as well. So yeah.
I think whatever you're doing, and I would say this about development across the board, bite-sized chunks. Do something, build process. Add your next thing. I think
Vangie,
when you start to
you broke up on us just a second. So start in chunks and then what?
Yeah, bite-sized chunks. Build something, build the system and the process for it, refine as you need, and then you can add the next thing. And I think the same thing goes with boards. What is the first thing that we can tackle? Maybe it's a theology of development, making sure we're all on the same page. Then maybe it's a job description if we don't have one. But and then it's equipping and finding ways for people to be involved. But I think in the fundraising world, we've got a lot of things coming at us, chasing a lot of squirrels at times. And sometimes we do things and they fall off our plate. They're not priority. We're not doing them well. And donors are like, but you started that. And then I didn't see the next thing. So bite-sized chunks, really hone in. And then it'll just become part of your rhythm.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things for me that stood out, Vangie, was there are a number of things that you presented today that deal with having your board as a whole get on the same page with fundraising and developing that culture. And so maybe there's some material that Vangie's taught through here that you want to actually bring into your board meetings and use them as discussion starters and hash through some different concepts and say, where do we need to be on this? And let's make sure we're all on the same page. And you begin to set culture that way. And so Vangie's got great stuff here. And so I would say, think about how you can use it practically with your board members.
And there's a lot of great books. I mean, I can think of The Board and the CEO. This one is by Peter Greer and David Weekley. The Weekly. So, there's a lot of in addition to Henry Nouwen. He's probably my favorite, but a lot of great opportunities for you to kind of lean into some context. If you have board members that are like, I really want to learn more about what it means to be a board member, there's materials that you can do.
This one also is a super easy one for orientations, and I'll talk about that next week, but it's board member orientation, and it just covers fundamental basics of being a board member. It's super short. I think there's 70 pages in it, big writing. So it's not overwhelming, but it's a great tool just to hand someone, especially if they've never been a board member.
Coach Your Champions, that's a good one too. Yeah, great book for sure.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Vangie, thank you so much. I mean, just great stuff here. So in follow-up, we'll send out the PowerPoint presentation to you. We will send out the link to our registration page because we've got other great stuff coming up on boards. And we will also include Vangie's email address in there as well. So feel free to reach out to Vangie if you have some other questions. And as you are considering things like strategic planning, capital campaigns, things like that, I'm telling you, the focus group and Vangie, they are your people, they are your team. So maybe you just have questions about that. Feel free to reach out to them. They're doing incredible work. So, but we want to let you go today. Heather, could I ask you to just close us in prayer and just lift these leaders up today? Absolutely,
love to. Father, we do love that you have you've welcomed us into participating in what you care about in the world. And Lord, for each of these leaders here, each of these board members, executives, people who care about this work that they have been called into, Father, I pray that they would leave even now encouraged. Where people are feeling a bit overwhelmed, Lord, I just pray you would just highlight one or two things for them to just focus on, to feel motivated and encouraged to move forward in. Lord, we thank you that you are gracious, and like Vangie said to us, just take one thing and then implement it and develop it. Lord, you're so patient with us. You are not in a rush. You walk with us individually that way as we grow as your followers, as we grow as leaders. We're not behind. You are gracious and slow to being patient and long-suffering with us, even when we, make mistakes over and over. So I just pray that God, that weight would be lifted off any leader that has that now, and that they would feel inspired. And even as one person said, that this isn't a gross topic. It is us seeing what you're doing and what you've called us to as ministry, all forms, inviting people into participating with us. So we thank you, Father, for the board members that you have raised up for each of us. We pray, God, that you would bless them and you would help those that are executives and board chairs to find ways to bring this topic up that would encourage and inspire people in this area of how do you, God, want to fund all the work that's rest? How do we build those relationships in that way? So we just praise you and thank you for being a part of your kingdom work. And I do pray a special blessing on each person that has been a part of this today, that you would encourage them and give them what they need today for the things that are in front of them. And pray that you would bless Vangie, especially, Lord, as she has delivered this with great wisdom and just sharing from her years and years of experience. We're so grateful for her. And we just pray you bless her and her ministry and the focus group as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with us. Look for follow-up info, and we will catch you soon. Vangie, thank you so much again.
Good to be with you all.